am a child of God, right? Eliud William, he did a research program for us, and he said in his writing, a business plan they set up for us, and he said that Dominica has no competitive advantages when it comes to manufacturing. And he's right. He's right. Moving forward, Joseph Isaac on a trip to Haiti with us.
Don't mention a name.
Yeah, he's my friend. Right? He made an observation. We saw the abundance of poverty in Haiti, overwhelming poverty. But yet the folks who received us were very rich people. So here we were in abject poverty, almost 98% impoverished. But then we went and we were living in luxury. So he coined the phrase, it's not where you are, but who you are, where you are. And that never left me. And I've been thinking on that like before. So then we look at Mr. Philip Nassif. We say, we continue to elaborate that Dominica is this, Dominica is that, small island state, small population. We have this, we don't have this, we don't have that. But when you look at Mr. Philip Nassif, who happens to be my mentor, so to speak. I always speak of him, I always admire him. Look at his achievement. I want to submit to us today, guys, it's not where we are, but who we are, where we are. The achievement of Mr. Nassif is global. He received several awards. His achievement transcends all islands. He was able to impact the continents. All right? So I will stop there for that part. I now want to start my presentation as I prepared it. Now, the name of this event is called the Dominica Economic Revival Summit 2024. The theme is Planning for Dominica Sustainable Growth and Development. Commendations are in order for the organizers, namely the United Workers' Party and the Electoral Reform Coalition. First, I wish to again extend my heartfelt appreciation and thanks for the invitation. And I speak here in the capacity, not just as John Robin, but as the Managing Director of Benjo Simos. Now, Benjo Simos is the second largest manufacturing concern within the agro-processing sector in Dominica. This city survived 30 years. We survived. We have been surviving for 32 years. And we export 95% of what we produce to about 20 countries. And soon it will be about 30 countries. Our objective for this year is to ensure that Benjo Simos products are sold in 100% of the territories of CARICOM. And this is our objective for this year. I'm also the chairman of the Dominica Manufacturers Association and the immediate past president of the Caribbean Manufacturers Association. I'm the chair of the Caribbean Consultative Council to the EU. So when I speak to you, I basically know what I'm talking about. Secondly, I wish to congratulate the organizers of this brilliant, historic, and transformative summit. Ideally, it has been established that this undertaking will be inclusive. It will transcend political divides. It will foster a collective vision for economic revitalization. It will promote dialogue and interaction among delegates. Overall, it proposes to engender an atmosphere conducive to innovation, prosperity, and national unity. So this is the background of which I really speak. I want to look at the key element for sustaining success in the manufacturing agro-processing subsector. I want to deviate slightly because I am a graduate from the University of Adversity. I'm a pragmatic person. Right? I've been there. And I think as we talk about revitalizing Dominica and moving forward, the first thing we need to do is to have a vision. A vision. Now, what is a vision? The Oxford Dictionary describes a vision as the factual or state of being able to see. All right? The faculty or the state of being able to see. Or we could say the ability to think or plan for the future with wisdom, imagination, and knowledge. Now, if you have a vision, so first of all, for Dominica, we need a vision. And this vision has to be shared. We cannot keep that vision for ourselves. And it has to be holistic. We have to have our set goals, our set objective, we have to have our strategy, and we have to engage in continuous strategic planning. That's number one. Number two, we have to look at the role of management. Now, the role of management is to plan, organize, lead, and control. Now, the management we need for, let's say, for example, in the manufacturing industry, it must be catalyzed by educated people. It must be moved and managed by educated people. And not only managed by educated, but the workforce have to be educated. They must also apply sound scientific principles. It must not be based on emotion. It must be based on proven, globally accepted scientific principles. There must be continuous training and learning. We must be characterized by punctuality, regularity, and productivity. We are seeing a problem in Dominica right now where we have a problem with productivity, we have a problem with punctuality, we have a problem with regularity. People want to work, have a job, but they want to come to work 2 days a week. And I can tell you, sometimes we have to cancel production because 3, 4 people, critical to the work team, did not show up. And they want to come 3 days after and expect to get it and continue. I'm saying right now in Dominica, we are facing a crisis of good people to work. True. The Haitians have left, but I've also found out that our Dominican people, they are better workers, they are more disciplined, and they are more technically positioned than the Haitians. So we are still better off with our Dominican. What we need to do is to change the culture. We also need to ensure that our vision moving forward as far as our manufacturing is concerned, it has to be equipped with adequate financing. We have to look at the interest rate, the conditionalities in terms of the banks, and so we find that when we want to get a loan in the bank, the conditionalities are so strict that it's better you just forget it. And some of it has to be characterized by loan grant possibilities. So it doesn't only be loans, all right? We have to make sure that we have part loan and part grant. We have a problem in Dominica where we have inadequate infrastructure. And I speak specifically to the port facility. And the private sector in Dominica can attest to that. So often, a vessel comes in, and they see the surgeon, and you cannot get your goods for 2 weeks because the boat cannot dock. I think we need to get over that. This is a major problem as far as productivity is concerned in Dominica. We cannot ship our goods because we do not have organized shipping, particularly to the south of Dominica. For the past 20 years, we have not been able to ship anything as such to Barbados, St. Vincent, Grenada, Trinidad, Guyana, and Suriname. They are part of Caribbean. We have not had organized fishing vessels. Hopefully, we have had vessels, but they were very sporadic. The most consistent one we had was East Pac, and that was about 15 years ago. Right? So I think we need to look very seriously. Maybe the manufacturers need to get together and discuss with the government. How do we have a vessel that can take Not our fresh produce alone, but our manufactured goods, both to the north and to the south of Dominica. We need to continue to improve our roads. The factory space continues to be a major problem. We have factory space at the Cape Bank. At this point, 98% of it is being used. Although it was engineered for manufacturing, 98% are used by sectors other than manufacturing. And this is much concern. The cost of periodicity is a concern. Water, ever so often water, we don't have water, we don't have electricity. It impacts on manufacturing. As such, we have had to have our own tank, we have to have our own generator, so we have had to adapt. And this is what a manufacturer needs to adapt to these changing circumstances, so these eventualities do not affect you. Okay, so we continue. Equipment and technology. We need to ensure that we look at appropriate equipment and technology. These technologies have to be scalable, it has to be serviceable, it has to be repairable, and it has to be easily replaceable. We have too many people who get equipment, equipped with all types of technologies, and no sooner they have a problem after a month or 2 months, and for 2 years after, they still cannot get this repaired. So we have to look at that. We have to also look at the proximity of our labor force. How far does the labor force live from what we are producing? We must establish our factories close to the ports and close to the labor force. Critically, we have to look at strategic partnering. I've partnered with Joey Peltier, and this is so he supplied ginger. I've strategic partnering with Carrot Glass. So Carrot Glass, for example, because of our need to scale up and to reduce costs, we do not buy a container of bottles every month. But we buy a container, we know our projection for the year, so they will give us a price, a year price based on that quantity. Our manufacturing in Dominica has to be characterized by mass customization. As I tell you, 90%, 95% of what we produce is manufactured, is exported, and we've been doing that for 32 years. Right. Now, for mass customization, when we say mass customization, what do we mean? You have your capacity to produce and to sell what you have, but other people want your product, but they don't want your brand. They are saying, do a brand for me. They have marketing and other logistical support. They can impact very significantly your capacity utilization. So instead of you producing 1,000 units for yourself, you can produce 10,000 units, and you have a market for 9,000. So this is something we have to look at very, very strictly. We think that employees' empowerment has to be featured. We have to empower employees. Sometimes we have to give them shares in the business, and there has to be a positive, continuous succession plan. We realize that supply chain logistics is a big problem. Now, I'm saying that so that I can get you thinking out of the norm. Our experience at Benjo CMOS is that too often, for example, we work with King Ocean, and our container arrives in St. Martin from Trinidad, and it gets stayed down, it gets left back in St. Martin, and this has happened more than 5-6 times. So sometimes you might get it a week after, 2 weeks after, and there's no compensation. We need to look very strictly at quality assurance. Quality is not about food products. Quality, every form of manufacturing, there is quality. Even collection of rubbish, there is quality. Guys come and they collect my rubbish at home. When they come, they just send the bins. They pick up some and they lift some. This is bad quality rubbish collection. Our marketing and our new approach must be characterized by a marketing mix. And we're talking about the product has to be good, the price has to be good, the presentation has to be good, and it must be promoted. All right? It must be promoted properly, it must be marketed, advertised properly. We also have to do marketing research. Marketing research basically is finding out what the market needs. It is not about you going and have a product, I'm going to sell it. No, you have to do your research, find out what the market needs, and then you go and you design a product to respond to the market needs, and also you have to exceed the market expectations. All right. It must be characterized by innovation, creativity, and also the overall team has to be present where ideas are being birthed. I am not here to make a presentation. I am here to get new ideas on how I can better my life, better my business, better my employees. So in other words, as a business person, you have to be always shopping for ideas, because you sit down in the business, and I remember my friend Armand Johnson said, if you are in the business all the time, you would not really understand in the business. But to really understand the business, you have to get out of the business so that you can work on the business. So right now, I am working on my business. Allow me another 3 minutes and I'll finish. All right, now, as I conclude, I want to basically make a few recommendations and conclusions. I think the approach to our new manufacturing, the new economic revitalization effort has to be holistic. It's not about which side you're on. This is Dominica. It has to be all for each, and it has to be each for all. I think we need in the manufacturing sector to identify about 20 significant manufacturing concerns, and we must transform them from a cottage industry to automated operation. And that means if we're producing 200 cartons, we should aspire to produce 2,000 cartons. And this is where we need to, this is the thinking we need to have. It must be given political support and characterized by private-public sector participation. It must be open to investors outside of the family. It must also be professionally run and managed. The government should give strict consideration to the idea of subsidies. I think we are playing, even manufacturers of water. We have the most water in the Caribbean. Yet the household, they are paying a minimal amount. The industrial sectors are paying a significant amount for water. It may be cheap, but this is what we have. We have to manage what we have so that we can get the competitive advantage. We have to reduce the cost of water so that, because we are saying that all the factors of production which is expensive is against us. We have water. So what I'm saying, let us subsidize water, let us subsidize electricity for geothermal to our manufacturing companies so we can reduce their costs. All right? Also, very significantly, we have to apply a lean marketing strategy. When we say a lean marketing strategy, it has to be aggressive, it has to be innovative, it has to be timely, and it has to be creative. And it has to be adaptable. All right? We do not relax. Everything has to be done according to a systemized pattern. I think in the era of the fact that we are experiencing so many and so frequently experiencing issues of hurricane, the Palestinians built underground. We need to build factories underground. We saw what happened to Bello. We saw what happened to Dominica Brewery and Beverages Limited. We have the option to build underground because in one day, in a few hours, Dominica Brewery and Beverage was wiped out. DCP was affected. Bello disappeared. We cannot do the same thing the same way all the time. That is a recipe for madman. So we have to look at how do we build stronger, better, and look at the possibility of building for sustainability. Now, our marketing strategy has to be global. It cannot be that we have a strategy where we are trying to produce in Dominica, using the international marketing strategy and trying to sell globally. That is is not going to work because why? In our jurisdiction, our cost of production is so high. So what we have to do is, we have developed our technologies. Let us move the means of production from Dominica to South America, to North America, to Asia, to Africa, and the rest of the world. We will carry our technology and we will get our dividend for it, good contracts, but we must stop thinking that the ideas we have developed are just for Dominica. So we have to move the means of production, like we can say we're going to, and we have been working on that. What you guys are talking about, I'm telling you, Benjo Siemens have been doing this for the past 40 years. We set up a factory in St. Lucia, we set up one in Miami, we set up one in, we went to Asia, and we started doing that. But when you come back here, and you're talking, people think, you know, you're crazy. But I remember Brother Hosan said, and Brother Hosan died several years ago, but he said that he dropped that in my spirit. He said, Mr. Robin, as I go around the Caribbean and I see Benjo Siemens each and everywhere, I now understand what you're talking about. So I'm saying to us, we must change this status quo. Now, how do we finance some of those things? And we had a brilliant idea from our dear Prime Minister. And he suggested that we should tax goods that are produced out of Dominica, that are made in Dominica, but are also made in Dominica, and we should use that tax to finance our industrial development, finance manufacturing. I thought that was a good suggestion. For example, we are talking about Antigua is importing our plantain chips, and what we are also importing plantain chips from Costa Rica. Why don't we put a tax on those plantain chips that comes into our shop and use that to develop our agro-processing manufacturing sector? I think in Dominica, we need to revitalize the Negmawa spirit. We need to revitalize the spirit of Jacko, Bala, Kongori, Seseru, and Parcel. I think we have become a coward people. We have become a people who are very unfaithful to God. And we have become a people that we have a spirit of fear. We have allowed the spirit of fear to conquer us. And the Bible says in 2 Timothy 7, God did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind. He also said that righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach. As such, I want to say finally that we need to choose this day who we will follow. Amen.
Thank you very much, John. That was excellent. Okay, is that He's ready to fight. Okay, is there? Go ahead. Yeah.
So there is this lady, Sister Natalie Charles, and this lady is the encyclopedia of products of manufacturing Dominica's with using, a lot of what Dominica have. Sister Nat have how many recipes? She not only have recipes, but she has nutritional information, scientific information. And it is so sad as a country that says that we are so nature eye, that we cannot tap into Sister Nat's or what she's doing and put that in our school. It is so sad when somebody wants a snack that you see them go for chewies and all this kind of cautioning. And I'm saying that we need to tap into Sister Nat. Sister Nat is 80-something years. So she's not there going to be long for us. We need to do something with that lady, give her a proper satisfaction that all the work that she has done. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Sister Nat can make, cassava. She did all kind of things with cassava, mango, she do hair product, everything. And as a manufacturer, we need to embody that lady and all what she's done and take that information and make it part of our Manufacturers Association.
I'm not sure you heard the question you want to answer.
I don't have a question. I'm just saying that.
Well, just a suggestion, but yeah, thank you.
It's sad that we have not embodied that lady.
Thank you very much. Incidentally, at lunch we were having a little conversation, and I will give you the story. During the COVID period, there's this lady. She's a pathologist. I think she's Jamaican, but she's married to Dominica from the Wesley area. Anybody familiar with what I'm talking about? But I remember, the part of what you said, I remember she said to us in a men's ministry group that she knew about COVID before it was announced to the world. And she knew about it simply because folks in China had called her to use her teas. Because they knew she had done the research and they knew that her teas was antiviral. And they were using the teas before. And there were some other famous people around the world apparently that knew about the teas and were using the teas. But what's the difference? There are about a couple of ingredients, and Sister Nat has a tea that has some of the very same ingredients in that particular tea. I researched each one of them when she told us about it, but it's sold at Richard and so on. I mean, that might be a free ad for her. Look for Virus, but Sister Nat has a similar product. Yeah, but the difference is this. She had done the research. She had done, not just do the research as in, I mean, we hear about these things from our old parents, from our parents and so on, and we know what they can do. But doctors won't recommend it because it's not tried, it's not proven, it's not tested. But she had actually done the test. She's actually done the clinical test. In the same way you would take a pharmaceutical product and find 1,000 people or 10,000 people and you run a test and you prove the impact of that particular herb or that particular combination of herb on the virus. She actually had done that and the Chinese knew about it. Alright? So the thing is that people like Sister Nat has knowledge, and Baron was saying, we have to start by finding the knowledge that exists. That's where we start. But then we need to find the funds to help people, or to build the kinds of institutions, organizations that can help people like that to do the kinds of research needed, to take it from just a product that cannot be sold as a nutraceutical. It can only be sold as a food product. But if you can do the research, the kind of clinical research, you can transit to a nutraceutical product that can access the US market and so on. There is so much more we can do with what we have. And there are people who understand, but we do not have the systems and the governance to do what we need to do. That's the challenge we are facing, and that's what we have to turn around. And we got to do it as soon as we can change the government, but we have got to do it even before then. We have to start now. We have to find a way to help people, or to find information from people like Sister Nat and so on. So thanks for that contribution. Yes, go ahead.
Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. I promised myself not to say anything, but I cannot not say anything. First, I would like to say to the organizers of this Dominica Economic Revival Summit, thumbs up. Last night. Also, I would like to take the opportunity to commend my brother John there and also sympathize with you. I knew Benji personally. Way back when, again, what are we talking about now? One of the things he said, that what we are talking about now is what they've been doing over 42 years ago. And way back when I was the chairperson for the Mount Prospect Village Council Steering Committee, Brother Benji used to come and sing, you know, and then we used to have some of the best village feasts in Mount Prospect every Easter time. So I want to take this opportunity to sympathize with you and say to you, accept all sympathy. Also, I want to take a leaf from your, you said you are motivators, and you're a motivator of mine as well. You know that? Because you're innovative, creative, taking that bold step, and then you're doing your thing. You know that? And people like you make me move. You know that? People like you make me move. So we just like to take the opportunity to commend you and Benjamin Simons on what you are doing, not just for yourselves and your family, but for Dominica. And I would like to say to us, whatever we are saying there now, we really have to act upon it. Earlier on, I was speaking to my brother next to me, and then he was saying to me, when we were going for lunch, he said to me, nice conversations, nice talk, but what are we going to do about it? What's next? You understand? So I said to him, well, let's see, let us talk and I support you. You know, and I'm not sure if he was going to speak before me, but I had to take that opportunity to speak after our brother John spoke. Because I think a lot of the things that we are saying here, we are not just speaking. We are speaking because we are pregnant. We are speaking because we are hurting. We are speaking because we want change. And when I look into none of us, I think last night Dr. Thompson said it properly. I listened to him attentively. I'm a very detailed person. I listened to what he had to say. I watch his body language after living in the UK for many years. Greetings and body language. I watch him, I analyze his body language. And he spoke from his heart. You understand? And especially from his experience. I believe that nothing did just happen. In his experience of where he is now, as he said, you look at the latitude of Dominica, Mr. Thompson, what is it? Yes. 15 north, 15 south, and you look at the geographical location, and it wasn't by chance he was positioned, and he is positioned where he is right now in southern Sudan. And he's using that same, he's saying to himself, but I'm here for a purpose. He's here for a purpose, he's saying to himself. So let us take advantage of what we've got. We have it. I'm saying all that to say, I recognize quite a few faces here, my brother here, you know. There's quite a few faces there that we are all here for a reason. We are all here because we want to be here. Let's not make this summit just a start and finish. I personally, I'm just turned 50, I'm saying that boldly, I'm proud to be 50, and I don't have time to waste. I promise, I lost my both parents to what we're talking about. My mom was into culinary herbs and vegetables. Dad was into his livestock. I was saying to my brother as well, Daddy was into his island. They called it Mountain Dew at the time. Yeah? So Daddy did his tree crops and livestock, but he also did his island. And Daddy bought 9 brand new vehicles out of what he was doing. Way back when. What? Now we have used vehicles playing heavy, but my dad used to buy brand new vehicles and still on it. Way back when. Right? So we want it. I mean, we all have our own story. I have my own story, and all of us also have our own story. I'm saying what we are saying here now, especially in this summit, let's not make it just be a talking exercise. Every one of us can contribute to where we go from here. Thank you.
Yes, and the last comment is very relevant. And John in particular is very determined to take whatever we can out of the summit and encourage everyone, let's work together to create a document that will begin to inform our direction in the future. So cannot be just talk anymore. There has to be action. So thank you very much. Okay, so we have with us Darwin Telemark. He will tell you a little more about himself, but he works in Antigua. He's a Dominican and he used to be a cricketer. But Darwin is a good guy. And he will be speaking to us on defining the role of transportation sector. He works in that sector. He worked in that sector before. He also was involved in agriculture export activity in Dominica. So welcome, Darwin. You have the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone. Am I being heard clearly? Okay, I want to first thank God for another day. I've had a very rough few days, and you can believe it, I was under anesthetic this morning, so I am not done. I'm ready to roll. I think if there are sacrifices to be made, you should make it for what matters most, and indeed, your country before self is that we all recognize is important to our overall existence. I want to first just grasp from the director of this program, how long do I have to speak?
You have 25 minutes. 20 minutes.
Okay, very well. So what I'm going to do is I have some slides, but I'm going to use some slides to create more of a discussion point, but I want to capture some salient points on the subject matter that I want to deliver. First of all, there is no doubt that we live on an island. The difference in living on an island than any place else is quite stark. On a continent, you can receive things via different modes of transport. You can take the rail, you can take a highway, you can take small roads, you can take different types of busing systems, you can take ferries, you can take airplanes, you can take ships. Some continents, you have river ferries, river boats, you have hovercrafts, so many different things happen on big countries. On an island, especially small island developing states, we rely on marine transport for our three basic needs: our food, clothing, and shelter, the development of our economies through trade and logistics and supply chain systems relies primarily on transport. Now, what we've seen over time is that one of the things that we recognize that change is inevitable. Change happens, and as change happens, we move from one dispensation to the next. The development agenda of any country has to have a very systematic and chronological path towards an end. If we are ad hocish in our approach to mapping a future, then it becomes disjointed, disconnected, and without a very focused strategic alignment towards an end, we end up doing things that are not really in line with bringing out the best outcome. So in terms of transport and port, what I want to focus on is what we've seen in an industry. So first I'd like to look at the maritime industry, then I'll look at aviation. I'm trying to pull it together to give my impression of what I think should be. I have here what I think are the key stakeholders at ports. Those of you who are seeing the screen, you can see your government agencies. We have the external partners, such as shipping line, airlines would be included in here, brokers, forwarders. We have civil society, which are the people who actually we serve. We have the internal stakeholders. One of the things I'll say about the internal stakeholders is that they tend to think that the ports belong to them, that the port doesn't serve the people. And in fact, that is always a misnomer, and something that I have been fighting here in Antigua to bring across is that the port belongs to the people, it has to serve the people, and to the extent that it limits the efficient delivery of service to the people, it has to continue to evolve to the point where it can't ultimately do that. So it's not all okay to say that we have an airport or a seaport that is looking nice and looking good. It has to actually improve the lives of the people that it serves, and that's the ultimate objective of the port. So ports needs to change, and they have changed. Here is an example of change. A few years ago, and there may be some in the room who remember this at the Deepwater Harbor, goods came into our countries by slings and barrels and boxes. That was called a brig. That was pre-containerization, and in the pre-containerization stage, manpower was a significant piece of what was required to function at ports. So we had that first stage where break bulk shipments would come off ships. As a matter of fact, the ships would wait outside. In some countries, the ships could not come all the way in because there were channels that were creating problems. In those islands like Dominica, where we have deep water, it was always able for ships to come up. But once they came up, it required manpower to take the cargo off the ship and put them into the warehouse. If you go down to Woodbridge Bay, you will notice that there are warehouses inside the port. Well, those warehouses reminiscent of a time when we had loose cargo, break bulk boxes and barrels that needed to come off the ship and be placed into the warehouse where it was assessed for taxes and then delivered. Since that era, however, containerization has shown up. In many cases, the advent of containerization has not yet been fully manifested in our islands. And this is one of the things that we see when we see ports that are still structured as brick bulk ports facilitating containerization. So we speak of trade facilitation, we speak of the need to ensure that there is a more efficient delivery of services out of our ports. But we must first understand that the structure that existed there does not match the service levels that is coming to us. And I'll get to that in a minute. Let's step back one. When the ports were organized as break bulk ports in the 50s, 60s, there was no port authority. The controller of customs ran the entire process. The controller was in charge because there was one objective of ports at that time. It wasn't about efficient delivery of goods. It wasn't about safeguarding goods. It was about taxes. Ports were set up to collect the only form of taxation that existed at the time, import-export. So the mercantile system was controlled through the warehouse, and so the warehouse served a significant purpose. With containerization, which is development, what we've seen is that the actual containers that are now on the ships, they became warehouses themselves. We have not yet advanced the process to where those ISO containers or warehouses can actually deliver greater efficient services to our businesses. Businesses still have to wait days and weeks before they can get cargo. Businesses have to wait days before customs officer shows up to be able to unstuff and clear it. Or in some cases, they have to wait until late in the day or the next day before they can get an officer. And so that entire process continues to stymie the efficient activation of the benefits that containerization ought to have delivered to us. And so what we aim to do as ports, or what we should be aiming to do as ports, is to understand first, why was the controller of customs changed around from managing the port itself, and then a port authority was established. If you go back to the annals and look at the historical requirements at the time, as the markets become more and more complex, as the stakeholders, civic community demanded more of the ports, the role of customs could not deliver that which was required, and they needed another entity who could facilitate what the market was demanding of the port. In came the Port Authority. There's one thing we didn't do at that time, is we did not amend the Customs Act to insert the Port Authority. So what we now have is the Customs Act that remained the same. It's been amended, but not amended in terms of facilitating the Port Authority Act. It was just amended to facilitate the Customs Act. The Port Authority Act was created, and the conflicts still exist even now. Who is in charge? Who says what? Who makes what goes? So right away, in the space where we want to have the greatest efficiency and cost reduction, you have an issue that continues to plague the private sector, continues to plague the efficient delivery of services because lines are not properly drawn, and the efficient structure that needs to be in place still lags. Therefore, one of the first things that I would recommend in looking at how we advance the broader facilitation for industry is that we look at the structure that exists at our doorway, at our gate, at our door. Now I call the port our door. This is where everything comes into. The airport and the seaport is where we receive things. And so if we are efficient at the gate, then further into the gate, efficiency builds. If we are inefficient at the gate, we take imported inflated costs, add our own cost to it, and as we go further inland, we continue to find that there are more and more pressure that adds up, so that when the merchants begin to do their costing and their pricing, it ends up being something that is difficult for the local market. And if we're going to export, because we have imported additional costs, then you're now leading to where the efficiencies that you need to create a competitive product is challenged by our own inefficiencies, and so this is why we're saying we have to look at how we restructure our ports. So just to show the realities of containerization and shipping and transport, I just have on the screen here some examples of where the industry went from. If you go back to my screen here, you will see slings and small vessels, and a few years later, 40, 50 years later, look at the difference that exists now in terms of containerization. We've had ships that went from small to large, to Panamax, to Neo-Panamax, to Magnamax, and now we have super Panamax ships, some holding 5,000 containers, 7,000 containers, up to 20,000 containers. So the evolution of ships has actually happened while our ports have remained the same. Now where do those ships come to? They come to our ports. So industry continues to evolve, but our ports remain the same, and part of our efforts has to be, we may never be able to line up perfectly and match industry, but we should always be attempting to ensure that the efficiencies that we wish to deliver is delivered. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you just think with me for a little bit, I will bring something to your attention that many of us ignore. If you get a bill of lading from Tropical Shipping or King Ocean or any one of the carriers that comes to Dominica, you see a number on the bill of lading. That number says, say, $7,500 for a container. We look at that number and we say, wow, that's expensive. And what I like to say is, okay, that's what the ship is charging. Now, when it lands in the port, we need to ask ourselves, from the landing space on the port to your warehouse, who monitors and manages that cost? Cost of landing, cost of handling, cost of inefficiencies, cost of breakdowns, cost of having to do things that should not happen at ports to get your cargo. The type of cost that we create and we contribute to is never seen, because those are hidden. They're not on a piece of paper as one single number. But if you were to do the assessment, you would find out from the tackle, or from the end of the crane up to your warehouse, you may very well exceed $7,500. You may not even recognize it, but I can give you some examples. First, you have agency agreements that at times create significant extra cost to customers in terms of how agents create cost of ports. That happens. That has been addressed in some cases. I'm happy that Dominica, led by Benoit Badwell, was able to move the port to an FAS system that kind of created some efficiencies in terms of how that was handled. That's a very good thing. That's one of a good example, actually, of a change that was necessary. But still, the cost mounts. For example, you have carriers who are charging customers for the length of the time the cargo stays in port before they get access to it. The port charges the customer storage. The shipping line charges the customer storage. Then the cargo goes out the door. And the shipping line charges the customers to keep that box, or keeping it for an extra 2 or 3 days. And all of a sudden you have additional costs that businesses have to add into their mix, both at the retail level or the wholesale level and the manufacturing or exporting level. So in the United States, and that's where I was trained in this business, there is an agency called the Federal Maritime Corporation that monitors what every shipping line charges every customer. Shipping is regulated, except in the Caribbean, in our space. We leave it, anyone can do whatever they want. There are some examples of that. You go to one agent in Dominica, they'll charge you $50 for a piece of paper, the bill of lading. You go to another one, it's $80. You go to another one, it's $120. Who says what it is? And therein lies the discussion around we monitor and manage cost. Who regulates that? Who decides what should be? Now, you go on and you say, the FMC in the United States says to a shipping line, why are you charging when the cargo is sitting in the port and when the cargo is being driven to the customer, when it gets to the customer? If you go back to rulings that were handed out to CMA CGM just 2 or 3 weeks ago, Federal Maritime Government says you will not charge customers for detention and demurrage charges when the cargo is actually sitting where it is? Well, guess what? In our ports, they charge us when it's sitting, the port charges us when it's sitting, it goes out, they're charging us, and no one stops to say, hey, how is this affecting the end user? How is this affecting the people and the owners of the port? Just a food for thought that we need to look at. Our operations is another angle that we have to look at to see how we can modernize it. Like I said, we went from handling with hands to handling with cranes. Dominica today on tropical, on geese, when it comes home and CGM or the other lines that comes by, all of them are using geared ships. Geared ships with crane discharge on cargo. Those cargo actually are being handled in one of the most inefficient ways possible. Now, that's probably the way we can do it, but that is a highly inefficient mode of handling cargo, and it ends up costing us a lot of money. What else happens in our port? Sometimes there are cruise ships at the port. Cargo ships have to sit outside and wait until the cruise ships move, and when that happens, the ship either sits there or goes someplace else and has to come back to us. That's cost. We have to look at how we address that as well. But if you were to take, for example, what happens with a port that has a crane and a port that doesn't have a crane. So Antigua has a crane, and we are lifting off 22, 26 moves an hour. And in Dominica, when tropical comes in, if it gets the crane working well, they'll probably do 7 or 8, maybe 9 moves an hour if they get it right. Now, that's a huge difference in terms of productivity and efficiency. And as far as that goes, those are some of the realignments that we must make if we're going to address the issues of how our ports work. Now, recently, the IMO has implemented a standard. The standard is called the Carbon Intensity Index. The Carbon Intensity Index measurement relates to how ships are going to be allowed to expose the atmosphere to carbon emissions. So you're going to be measured by the number of carbon that you emit versus the distance that you move. Why am I bringing that up now? Port operations is now becoming under the microscope. If ships are challenged by how much they emit over distance, it means that they are forced to slow down to minimize the impact of their own emissions. And as they slow down, it takes longer to get from port to port. Therefore, if the ships cannot move as fast and your port operation is not as efficient, it therefore puts your port at risk. So it is necessary for all of us to take a hard look, not only at how we manage internally our efficiencies and our port operations, but also how those port operations marries up with the demands of industry, the shipping lines. As they come to us, are they happy to come, or are they knowingly coming in expecting to face massive amount of pressure, and what can we do to relieve that pressure? I have some ideas, but we won't get into that. We'll get into that a little later. Now, overall, what is the real value that your port actually can bring to your citizens? Now, it must be understood that the port, or most of our ports in the region, are owned by governments. In recent times, we've seen some governments make some arrangements with leasing their cruise ports to a private entity. There is enough academic assessments on that subject to say there are pros and cons to that. We won't get into that right now, but that has happened in a few instances. That ought to be looked at closely. However, the ports are basically owned by governments. And so, as we have entities that are owned by governments, what is the responsibility of our ports? In a broader discussion, if you look at all our ports in the region, we have sort of created social structures where we facilitate mass employment over greater efficiencies. Now, I have to be very careful. I'm a port director. I can't speak of addressing the issue of mass employment at ports without exposing the fact that some folks may not be happy to say that. But is that the role of the port? Is that essentially why the port was created? And in fact, if that is your doorway that you're creating the greatest efficiency at, is that the place to create the inefficiencies? Isn't it better to then look at other areas to utilize the numbers of people that you want and create greater efficiencies where you need it? Because and the port is where the greatest accumulating of costs exists. That is where the CIF value plus the landing and the port related activities and agency related activities culminates into the massive amount of expenses that any customer is going to face on any cargo they import to the island. Therefore, we have to address what happens there more efficiently. And therefore, what we've seen, and I've just shown you a couple slides that shows that there has to be change, there has to be movement, there has to be a dynamic intention to ensure that the object of achieving efficiency and productivity is achieved at the highest level, not to say that your port is working well and celebrating that your port is efficient, but your businesses require those breaks, those little areas where things can be a little bit better so that they can survive. Your competitive manufacturing sector needs to have some peace, that things are not going to escalate, where the container stayed longer at the port because we had a breakdown with the machine that lifted it or needed to lift it, or all those little things that goes into creating these challenges. And so as we look to say what our development path should be on, I think the focus on trying to get our ports to be way more efficient are things that I believe we should take a look at. Now, there are 5 things that I think we can focus on to build out the type of efficiencies of our ports that I'd like to just end this section on. First, I think we need to look at legislative reform at our ports in terms of the corporate governance structure, how the ports are structured, how they are set up, who gets on the board, why. Is it okay just to put someone who doesn't have the core essentials that points towards efficiency and creativity on the port's board? So that if I were going to be looking for people to put on a port, certainly wouldn't be my friend. It'd be someone who I know can deliver the type of action that would lead to something different, something better. So legislative reform is one that I would look at. In that same legislative reform, I would change the port manager's role from being a political appointment to a role that becomes professional. I do not believe that anyone would do my job because of how political it is. If you have bright young people who are going to university, getting MBAs, why would they want a port manager's job when if the government changes, you're fired? No one wants that. And therefore, if you want good people to be in the roles that would suggest that you are serious about developing an efficient path, I think we should professionalize that role. Additionally, port managers themselves cannot be banner-waving political entities. You can't be out there on the flag waving a blue or red. You have to understand the role, step aside, and understand that you are serving the broader public, broader interest, and not be so directly aligned. But that's a role that I would suggest that we can make an adjustment in. Our human resource development requires massive development. The world is changing, the industry is changing, supply chains are emerging, Internet of Things, digitalization, all those stuff that are coming at us. We need people who can continue to emerge and point us in the right direction. So we need to have the right human resource. Cannot be that we just say, okay, you didn't finish school, you didn't have a university degree, we'll send you to the port. The port can no longer be that space where you send hands and strong feet. It's now moved from that era where we need hands and feet. We need strong minds, creative minds, brighter minds, and so we need to have more university graduates at our ports going in there and being treated in the same way, by the way. We have to ensure they're remunerated properly. We need to look at how we can reconstruct our port environment to ensure that we can derive the greatest efficiencies. I pointed out in a while. We need to have a port that can be fully automated, fully digitalized, and then with the right equipment, as well as being climate adaptable. I think that is also something that we need to look at. When you have an old piece of infrastructure built in the 1960s, you can't talk about digitalization, even automation, because if you put a heavy crane on that surface, it might collapse. So there are things you have to look at as how you do that. We spoke of digitalization. We look at investment. And we can look at various forms of investment. We need to try to ensure that all of these components are in place to try to ensure that the real benefit of containerization can be achieved. Now, I'll close here because I think I went over my time. If I were looking at Woodbridge Bay, I would do one thing right away. I would remove all the warehouse that is in Woodbridge Bay immediately, remove them, build a warehouse someplace else. Maybe you don't even need to build one. You just go down to Canefield where the warehouses are and deliver shed 1, shed 2 there, and the yard at Woodbridge Bay can now become somewhere that containers can be properly utilized, maybe even get a crane in there. That's just one of my suggestions or ideas. It also means a far more safe environment. If in fact you had crickets just coming through that place, you could create a path big enough that it could be facilitated without that crushing, closed, tight space that exists right now with all of these. Lots more that I can speak on, but I think I could stop focusing on an area that I love so much. So, sorry, but I gave you 20, 25 minutes, I think. And maybe there might be another time when I can go through this whole presentation and give you a more detailed description of what we think.
Thank you very much. I hope you heard that. There was a comment that said to up at home. Okay, thank you very much. Just to put it in a little bit of perspective, and thank you so much, Darwin. I remember Dr. Mitchell asked this morning about the question of population. Dr. Fountain answered quite rightly that with a small population we are forced to think of ourselves as producing to meet the needs for exports. Yeah, those are there. And we've got to do that. Notice we're a small economy, we're an open economy. We have to depend on exports quite a bit. And John made the point this morning that he can't even get ships adequately to go to the south of the country. So it's a constraint of development. But being a smaller economy, we have to be efficient. We have to compete. And when you compete, there are various elements of cost that you have to try to control. And one of the elements that really trouble our manufacturers and our importers and everybody else is that to do with port services, port infrastructure. Infrastructure as a whole is quite an issue. We addressed it in the area of agriculture this morning. It comes up now as a general theme that cuts across tourism, cuts across manufacturing. But we have to get to the point where we are efficient in our services. And that's something any government needs to pay sufficient attention to. So thank you so much, Darwin, for that. Yes, you want us? You want us? Okay, Darwin, a question for you from Dr. Fountain. And then one more question, and then we have to move on because we have limitations.
Okay, Darwin, thank you very much for this. And I wanted to ask this because John, just before you, made a very interesting observation, which I really want to understand and to get your perspective on how, or a possible solution. He indicated that sometimes in terms of the transportation, well, one issue is that on the port, sometimes the boats can stop there. But the other issue, which is more troubling to me, is sometimes the containers goes to another country, and it is offloaded, and it stays a week or two before it can make its way back to Dominica. How, in your understanding of the way these things move around and the logistics, what's a practical solution for that kind of thing, or is there one? Especially as we're talking about increasing the efficiency. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fountain. I think first of all, one has to understand where you fit on the supply chain. We are archipelagic states. We are connected geographically, one after the other, and Dominica falls in the line with between Guadeloupe and Martinique. Prior to Guadeloupe, you have Antigua. Prior to Martinique, you have St. Lucia. So we know for a fact that ships are coming down this way. Now, every island gets served in various ways. There are some islands that are hubs. Kingston, Trinidad, and Caucedo are the three main hubs in the Caribbean. Caucedo is in Santo Domingo. Rio Jaina is a smaller hub out of Santo Domingo as well. However, in terms of the major hub, the entire Caribbean is served out of Miami. Dominica cargo from Miami goes straight from Miami to to Dominica. It doesn't come off any ship. It comes from Miami, it stops in St. Croix, and it comes to Antigua, stops in St. Kitts. The next port is Dominica. That happens every week. For cargo coming out of Trinidad, that voyage actually comes up from, and I'll also highlight something to you that we may not even be aware of. We have cargo coming from Trinidad. It goes up to St. Martin. On the way back from St. Thomas, that ship that comes to Antigua goes via St. Martin, and so that Dominica cargo is on that ship. So the ship from Trinidad will arrive there, say on a Friday, Saturday. It then connects with the ship coming from Miami, comes across to Antigua, and then from Antigua it goes to St. Kitts and Dominica. So you don't really have that sort of difficulty in terms of the issue of connectivity that I hear people speaking of all the time. As a matter of fact, we now have ships coming through the Panama Canal, going straight to Caucedo, Santo Domingo. The cargo gets in there on a Thursday, it is discharged over Thursday, Friday. Saturday, the tropical ship picks it up. It comes straight from Caucedo into Antigua. It drops off all the cargo in Antigua for Dominica, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Grenada, Trinidad, Barbados. And when tropical comes in on the Monday, it picks up that cargo and it goes on to the various destinations. Basically, what the lines are doing is that they're designing the services so that they can connect with the cargo that's moving. At any one point, if you move cargo anywhere in the region, it gets to the destination within the same allotted time that a container from Miami will get to you. So if it takes 6 days for your cargo to reach to you from Miami, it's going to be about 6 days from Trinidad. Now, why is that? Your market is served over a 6-day period. You can't change that. Doesn't matter how close you are. It doesn't matter how far you are. So, for example, St. Lucia will have the same 6-day transit because the St. Lucian cargo will sit in St. Martin or Antigua and be picked up and taken to Dominica by tropical or King Ocean. So, in actuality, what we see logistically is we are right there. Why can't the cargo go from here to there? Well, it doesn't. Logistics doesn't happen in that manner. Your logistics requires for sustainability of transport that the pooling of volumes must be done, and when that scale is achieved, then it makes sense for services to happen. If we try to do it in straight lines, there would be no ships. Matter of fact, I want to highlight something to you. We have to pay very serious attention. That PowerPoint presentation that I skimmed through just now is one of the most significant presentations being made throughout the region. It highlights one very salient fact. In 1992, there were 24 shipping lines going up and down and through the Caribbean. Many of you know their names: Burnwood Lines, Tech Marine Lines, Hagpark Lloyd, Mercer Lines. You had Kent Lines, you had Crowley, you had Sea Freight, you had a whole bunch. Well, there's been consolidation, there's been bankruptcy, and today, after having all these ships in a region where today we have more cargo at higher freight rates, we now have 4 shipping lines serving the Caribbean, with Geese making 5. And Geese, be careful what you say about Geese, because Geese is now having discussions about what they are going to do under the CII. Now, if I told you there is 4, it's not really 4, it's actually 3, because Seaboard Marine that used to come to every market no longer does that. So the Seaboard goes to Antigua, Trinidad, and Barbados, and goes nowhere else in the region. So you have CMA CGM, Tropical Shipping, and King Ocean serving us as a region, and that is happening because there's been so much difficulties with inefficiencies at our ports, and as scale becomes an issue and productivity and inefficiency abounds, it's leading to the dissolution of transport options, something we have to pay very close attention to. And so we should be a bit patient in understanding. If we're sending something from Dominica to another island, we won't go there in a day or two, although it's that close. It'll take at least 5-6 days to go, because that's how the markets are served.
All right, go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon to you, Mr. Telemark. I think your presentation was well measured. I really enjoyed it. Let me say earlier on, you alluded to the fact that there are mega ships now probably taking 5,000 containers, and we will not be adequately prepared in the Caribbean based on the ports that we have now to accommodate them. No, that's fair enough. But if I answer the question, what we've seen, when I noticed that you emphasize mostly on seaports, and I'm concerned about general ports of entry. So my question is going to be directed at the airport. So I was doing research, and I was doing research on both Boeing and Airbus. These are the two giants in terms of aircraft manufacturing, and they were talking about the whole idea of cutting down the capacity in which they make aircraft for them. They're going for lower seating capacity as opposed to enlarging the aircraft. And Dominica is typically in a situation where we are now undergoing one of our biggest capital projects, is the airport. And I want to ask, and I don't want a political response to another political question, I would like to ask, is it necessary right now to undergo such a massive project, knowing that things are going to be changed and we may not necessarily need that kind of strict problem to accommodate large aircraft? I just wanted to give an objective response to that question. It may not necessarily be what you're talking about, but I know you mainly emphasize on seaports.
So I can speak to that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
What I can say to you is, and the listeners, is that first of all, the airport is being constructed by a government who has made that a priority and is advancing that priority. The issue of how that airport is going to be maximized remains a question that has to be, I'm sure, of great concern to the government who is constructing it and to our government. I think that when we look around the Caribbean and we see of the utilization of the airports that exist, we would see that there is a significant lack of adequate utilization of the landing spaces that are now existing. However, some countries have made a determination that it is not in their interest to allow for passengers to be fed through sub-regional hubs. I am of the view that sub-regional hubs would have been a way better option or developing sub-regional hubs would have been a way better option, far more efficient means of transport. It would build a greater integration. It would lead to a greater degree of efficiencies, and in the long term, it may have relieved a large amount of debt. But that is one side of an argument. The fact is, the airport is being constructed. We saw the last one constructed being Argyle in St. Vincent. Argyle in St. Vincent has been largely underutilized. There are more and more arrangements being made by the government to try to bring more and more business in. So how well the government actually positions itself to attract more and more business will determine how well that airport is utilized. If you look at the industry, however, you will see that the requirement for more and more large airports in these small islands is probably something that one should take greater consideration of. But in our case, in our government's case, they have looked at it and they've made a determination that this is the direction that they would like to go on. I would say, though, that the extent to which we now have to try to figure out how to make that airport work is something that we have to put our caps on to figure out, because the airport is being built. I'm not of the view that we have the option now of saying should we or is it something that we should do. It's being built. We now have to say, how is this going to actually work, and can we look for ways to actually make it work to our interest? Because it's coming up in my village, my beautiful village of Wesley. I'm hoping that the Wesley people benefits from that beautiful airport that I see there. That's something that I hope actually happens as well. That it doesn't just become something that where we've been left out. But definitely the decision is made to put it in, and we have to set our minds now to say, how do we actually maximize it? It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be a beautiful thing when we have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 direct flights coming in. But the determination is made. We have to go along with it. While I'm on that subject, though, I would like to say that we are now seeing an emergence of small regional carriers that is filling up the space. And Sunrise Airlines is the latest one. And I'm saluting the entities, individuals who supported the establishment of Sunrise Airlines, because it now has frequent daily flights to Dominica from Antigua, where I live, which did not exist before, at very affordable prices. I think it's coming in at a time when cricket might have been a motivating factor for it, but I'm hoping that it lives beyond that and carries on to where we have another option. We see Inter-Caribbean coming back with more routes. We see Cal putting in more routes. And when you begin to look at what is emerging, we are probably getting to the point where we may be we're seeing the emergence of LEA 2020 as well. When we see all of these things coming together, it's almost as if we're seeing a renaissance moment when regional aviation traffic might be coming back in a way bigger and stronger, because before this period, we only had LEA doing this service, and now we have 4 different carriers serving this space. I think that is a dynamics that we should be all excited about, because we may very well be the only region in the world that is seeing that high level of evolution in terms of new services via aviation. And going back to the point I raised just a moment ago, I think Sunrise and the folks who actually pushed it and made it happen, I am being told that there may have been some support from the government of Dominica. If that was, I think that was brilliant in trying to fill the gap that existed between islands that we could not get to and couldn't get from. St. Lucia, for example, it was horrible trying to get there. We now have a direct flight all the way from Antigua going way down. I used to struggle just to get to 12 minutes away to St. Kitts and have to wait for British Airways on Saturday to take a flight across. We can now get there with multiple options. So the situation is resolving itself, and I may say, folks, it's not resolving itself because of government's involvement. It's resolving itself because private interests is taking the risks and putting their money where their mouth is. Winner is privately owned. Winner is privately owned. Sunrise is privately owned. Al gets some subsidies from the Trinidad government, so there's some help there. But the Inter-Caribbean owner is a single man, and so we're seeing 3 carriers putting up their monies to say, let's try. I don't know if they'll exist for too long, but it's a refreshing thing to see private interests putting their money in a sector that is extremely difficult to raise profits.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, David. That was a lot for us to consider. I know the whole area of air travel is quite an area that has been spoken about a lot in the Caribbean, and there are various views on that. There are opposite views to what you've just said, but nevertheless, it's something that we cannot ignore because we are talking about creating efficiency. But we have to move on. I was looking for you earlier, but let's move on a little bit because we have to take Delbert, and Dr. Pascal is with us here. So let's call Delbert now. I'm hoping there's a gentleman at the back, Chef. Yeah, but no, but we cannot entertain the question at the moment. But I would have liked to give you a chance to say a little something there. It's so interesting what you were saying, but time is so much against us. But let's take Delbert now, and Delbert is going to speak on the construction sector. Sorry, where's that? Okay, overcoming the challenges within the construction sector. They're the best.
Good afternoon, everyone. I had a very long presentation put together. So I was going to get 20 minutes and then we'd have 30 minutes of interaction. So I put 50 minutes worth of presentation together and I realized I was wrong. I had some jokes lined up. I sort of haven't been doing some jokes lined up. I went back with my EIEI jokes, EIEO jokes lined up to break the case and so kind of done. We all have to talk about in the construction sector and let me just say good afternoon to all our dignitaries of the fountain. I want to specifically welcome my father who is here with us, Mr. Stewart. He's the reason I'm involved in construction and a big reason for where I am today. Welcome, Mr. Barnes. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to cut through all of the niceties and we're going to get straight down into business, right? Yeah. Understanding challenges, overcoming challenges in the construction industry. Before we start talking about overcoming the challenges, we first have to define where they are. You have to find where they come from and know how they are affecting us before we start trying and thinking of solutions. Because if you don't understand where the problems are coming from, how they originate, you might be fixing the wrong problem. So we're going to get straight into that. Defining what those challenges are. We're not going to be able to tackle all of them exactly, but hopefully we can address a number of them. We understand the importance of the construction industry and how it interconnects with every other sector. Because everybody who needs to operate a business needs a structure to do it from. You need to suitably build the roads to get there. You need your heating and ventilation, your plumbing, your wastewater systems. All of these things need to function properly. And somebody who knows how to use their hands, the right tools, and the technology must be able to do it and do it well for you. So once we understand that, we recognize that in a developing country, you're going to need to have a cadre of individuals who are well trained and who have access to the right tools, technology, know-how, and skill set. We understand the impact that construction has on the GDP of any developing country and why it must not be ignored. Because the amount of people that it touches, the amount of people that is employed in the sector, and the amount of people who are willing to get into the sector in order for other sectors to be able to grow. But how do we start defining challenges? Some of the challenges that we endure, we go through within the construction industry are actually good, because they provide an opportunity that creates an environment for sustainable growth. Some of the challenges that we go through in the industry creates an atmosphere for us to grow. Creates an atmosphere for you to be creative and innovative, find new solutions to some of the problems. Some of the other challenges that we go through actually makes sustainable growth more difficult. It makes it hard, and it takes us a longer time to get to the place where we want to see the sector, and by and large the country, get to. One of those things is our public investment strategy, or public investment policy. That stems from an administrative level. Your investment policy is what's going to drive the energy through and to your industries. That will determine how you use public funds and how your people are engaged and how your skills trades are engaged and the practices that you eventually adopt. In developing a public sector investment policy, there are a number of guiding principles that should dictate how the policy is developed. One of them is sustainability. And what that does is to ensure that your investments promote environmentally, sustainability, and long-term economic growth. Equity that ensures fair distribution of investment funds across different regions and population. Transparency intends to maintaining transparency in decision-making processes and investment allocations. Efficiency optimize the use of public funds to achieve the highest possible return on investment. And accountability. Accountability is to establish a clear, accountable mechanism for the management and outcome of investment. Now, these 5 guiding principles, we can stay for the rest of the afternoon talking about whether we see them here, how they have been utilized in our public investment policies. But these principles are what guide the way our country develops and how our sectors develop alongside those policies. There are some other areas of focus that helps to guide your public sector investment policy, like investment prioritization, your budget and finance, implementation and management, your monitoring and evaluation, transparency and accountability, your audits and reviews, your grievance mechanism, capacity building, and constant policy review and updates. Because policies are not set in stone. They are meant to be reviewed and updated as time goes by. But that is the first challenge that we have in the construction sector in Dominica. Not just the construction sector, in all of our industries, but right now we're talking about the construction sector. Our administrative policies and the practices that we have adopted continue to marginalize the development of the sector. Amen. The practices that we adopt and we see going forward almost completely negates and ignores some of the guiding principles that should be used to develop our policies and the practices. And what happens next is that these policies and practices is what guides our administrators into developing the legislations that follow. And we don't have time this afternoon to go through the legislation. But in 2021, and that's challenge number 2, in 2021, the Public Procurement and Contract Administration Act was repealed and replaced with the new Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Act. There was consultation done by the Builders and Contractors Association then. In 2021, outlining the challenges with the implementation of the new bill and the recognized inefficiencies. Even after the bill was passed in December of 2021, the State Builders and Contractors Association reviewed the pronouncements made in Parliament and discovered more inefficiencies that raised concerns. I would like to read to you the caution that they put out. Repealing the Public Procurement and Contract Administration Act No. 11 of 2012 and replacing it with the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Act, Bill 2021, would fail to achieve the purpose of the Act passed in 2012. Particularly in the areas associated with value for money, transparency, broad participation, fairness, equity, accountability, clarity of procurement events. It will also fail to foster public confidence in the procurement process. It will fail to increase the economy, facilitate real domestic growth, which will limit the money going into the underground economy. It will also fail to provide tangible evidence that the safeguards are effective in dealing efficiently with offenses and civil liberties. And importantly, it will depress the economy and depress the development of the private sector. Put to slumber the entrepreneurial spirit in our young people. Based on the evidence that we have seen since the passage of the bill in 2021, I would like to confirm this afternoon that the Builders and Contractors were right. Yes. Based on what we have seen in our public procurement processes and in the practices that we have adopted, the Builders and Contractors were right. So after you have public investment policy that does not holistically look at development and development of your people, and then you back that up with legislation that facilitates Let's look at how some of the practices and the implementations of those policies and practices have affected the construction market. And that's problem child number 3. Let's look at the housing revolution, for example, and the way it was implemented. Not that individuals and people who were vulnerable among us did not receive houses deservingly so. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the other impacts that it has had on the construction industry. Firstly, there was a disenfranchisement of the local and indigenous talent. The majority of the construction projects are single-handedly implemented by out-of-state contractors. But while there's some level of local involvement, it has not been at any sustainable level that would help to boost the capacity of the local industry. There has been some significant impact on the banks, and Dr. Fontaine is here, and he can confirm some of this. Because the banks in this process did not get the opportunity, the banks and credit unions did not get the opportunity to participate. And what that did or is doing is reducing their ability to be creative and to provide flexible, more creative financing options to people in the country. What that does is mean that their loan and financing portfolios are lower, reducing their capacity to add to the economic buoyancy of the country. It does not, the impact of the banks is not just in the housing sector, but I would like to stretch it past the housing sector and go into capital projects. Dr. Fontaine, how do you think the banks are benefiting from the construction of the international airport? You don't have to answer it, you come into question and answer. How are they benefiting from it? Because with the largest construction project on island that we have ever seen, you would expect that the banks would have some very large portfolios for heavy equipment. They have trucks, they have some excavators, they have some batching plants and so on that they have financed. I don't know if we have that information, but I don't think a lot of the credit unions are getting that type of opportunity. Maybe they have a couple $1 million, close to $1 billion in overdraft facilities. But if you have no local contractors working, foreign contractors don't need our banks and they don't need our credit unions. Except maybe to make a message, but we can clear that up later. The real estate market has also been affected. I see we have some real estate agents in here, and they can tell us better how the real estate market has been affected. Because with providing so many homes for people, some more vulnerable than others, and some less vulnerable, and some not vulnerable at all. What it has done, it has helped to stagnate the real estate market. It's put it in a different type of flux. And what it is doing is widening the gap. It's continuously widening the gap where you're seeing fewer and fewer people are able to afford homes. Similarly, in the credit union and finance situation, fewer and fewer loans means higher interest rates. So fewer and fewer homes and property sold means the price keeps going up. And that is what is happening even in the real estate market, and that is not good. There's a significant impact on contractors in a different way that we're going to hone in on now. And if you pay attention to the radio, you will hear some of them, and they are all my friends on all sides of the spectrum. Contractors do have color, especially when none of us know booty. We don't have color because we're looking to help one another. I say it now. They are all my friends. We do have color when we not looking. The bank call it flaws. There's a specific impact that is happening with contractors because of the scarcity of wood. Even while Dominica seems to be a buoyant country, because of the scarcity of wood, contractors are being forced to accept jobs at suboptimal prices. What do I mean by that? Below the market.
Yes.
Below the market value. And you'll be taking it because turnover is better than nothing, right? So you rather take it from one hand and wash it in the other hand and have something to do that had nothing to do at all.
Yes.
So contractors are taking the gamble and accepting jobs suboptimal prices. And what that is doing is that it is putting them in a really bad situation. Because it is ignoring the inflation rates, it is ignoring the price increase due to external and internal shocks, as well as the increasing cost of labor. Hence, we have had to create unsafe working environments where workers are overworked and underpaid. Workers and employees are also working in subpar conditions without proper facilities and benefits and the protections required. This inevitably leads to extreme decay in employee morale. And contractors and skillmen, in many cases, have placed themselves in unsustainable debt situations that they will not be able to overcome in the short to medium term. Ask them. Second situation, and this is even compounding the first one, is the management structure of some of these projects. If a management structure exists at all. Because what we're having is that the same contractors have now been forced to accept unfair contracts. Contracts that are very draconian and one-sided. And puts the contractor at a disadvantage. But very often you don't have time to study that because you're just trying to survive. And the situation that exists in those contracts is an improper adjudication system. What does that mean? It means that if you have a problem, if you run into a problem on the project, you have nowhere to go and your contract doesn't support you.
Jesus.
It means that whoever is your boss or whoever you're working for can take any sort of measure without any redress. And there's nothing in your contract that gives you some type of proper redress that addresses the situation in a humane, civilized, and ethical way. And our contractors are undergoing these situations, and it is placing them in a very, very bad situation that we have not seen the manifestation of.
Yes, sir.
It's very bad.
Very bad.
That is what is happening. Let's move swiftly on to the labor markets. The failures that we have seen in the labor markets. We're still defining the problems and the challenges that we're going through. In a little while, we'll start talking about some recommendations moving forward. Another impactful challenge is a challenge currently being experienced in and around the labor markets. In Dominica's history, one of the things that was very important was technical and vocational skills and competences. Not in isolation, but in tandem with academic excellence. So back in the day, going to school and having a skill was equally important. Even if you had a degree, learning to do something with your hands was equally important. Because that's how we survived. That's what propelled us as a people. We knew how to work with here and here. But more than that, our administrative leadership, our community and social and religious leadership found it important to create structured systems that would allow our young people to go to a place that would teach them a skill. And what that would do is make them much more marketable than if they ordinarily didn't go. You had places like the Londonderry Youth Camp. Anybody know that? The technical wing at the grammar school. The Clifton Dupini Technical College. The Technical Vocational Educational Program. The Junior Secondary School Program. The Youth Skills Training Program. And that is just to name a few outside of the informal way that contractors and skillmen and mechanics and agricultural professionals would train young people back in the day. Where have those institutions gone? The majority of those institutions, if not all of them, no longer exist. So Dr. Fontaine, today, the young men that you were speaking about last night, I was there.
Carefully,
carefully. If they wanted to go somewhere to learn a skill, where would they go? They want to work, but where would they go? Any paper. But let's look at the real situation. So there's not a school, right? But there must be some contractors that are working that they could go to. And that is a problem. We have no institutions, and we still have limited available informal avenues because the same contractors are not working. So the young people cannot even go by Mr. Paris and get a job and take half price because he will teach them carpentry. The carpentry Mr. Paris is doing now is for his wife. We have another situation, and all of this is compounding, right? Where we're talking about the replacement of skills. As our country ages, so do our skilled men. Yes. If I ask you to guess my father's age this afternoon, everybody will get it wrong. Everybody will get it wrong. You still get it wrong. Older. The older men that had those skills before, they're tired. Yes. They can no longer work. True. The majority of them are dying with their boots on because they don't have the opportunity to retire. That's not the problem. The problem is that when they die, there's nobody to replace them. Yes. And if we don't have the training institutes to train young people, and we don't have the informal sessions on informal avenues for young people to be trained, how are we going to replace the skill sets that we're losing to age, to death? Yes. It becomes compoundingly difficult. Yes, sir. When was the last time you saw somebody doing a mortise and tenon joint in some carpentry? That is history. I know about it because my father taught. But let's talk about machine shops. Before, you had machine shops where people would actually make parts for the engine of a deer caterpillar and fix it on site. That doesn't happen anymore. When last you see a machine shop? The last one they had at the State College, I'm not sure if they covered the building, maybe still with it. Technical wing at the grammar school, they used to do that. That no longer exists. We have an issue with replacing the skill sets. That doesn't exist anymore at any level. We're moving swiftly. Another big issue is the availability of opportunities within the labor markets. So after we've talked about all of those issues, we know that Dominica has a buoyant economy. Everybody says that, and we can see the work that is happening. A buoyant economy. Buoyant. I mean, we have plenty of money. I don't know, I'm still looking, but that's what it is. So young people are looking for the opportunities that exist, but nobody from an administrative level all the way down can show us any tangible areas of job opportunity and growth opportunities for young people within the sector. Everybody has to be fending for themselves. And that creates a very dangerous situation. And it brings me to my fourth point, the issue of attrition. If you don't have work, people will leave. There's a compounding situation in small island developing states like Dominica because the construction and construction in the market is cyclical. It's seasonal. It's not continuous. We don't always have work. What that means is that the majority of your construction employees are temporary workers. It means when we finish that project, we have to lay off 90% of the staff because we have work to keep them. But just suppose that in the Dominican situation, where contractors hardly even find work. It means you can't even keep your office staff. And send everybody home. So what happens? People have to feed their families, so they leave. They either go into a different career, or they leave the country. And very often, they never come back. So you're losing both the skilled people and the potentially skilled people, the unskilled people that would have liked to come into the market. You're losing them as well. Very quickly, what we're seeing, folks, is the complete disappearance of an industry. It's happening right before our eyes. It is the industry is disappearing because we're not replacing skills. The people that they're leaving, and we have no place to train anybody. Those are the types of challenges that we're facing in the construction sector. A sector that impacts and influences every other sector. Let's talk about the Builders and Contractors Association for a minute. One of the organizations that I'm very proud of, and I am very proud to be a part of, even in its dormant state. In addition to all of the work that BCAD has done or did in Dominica, in an effort to bolster resilience and sustainability of the construction industry through capacity building, training programs, and lobbying for equitable opportunities for contractors and artisans. BCAD tried to partner with the CBI program and with a few of the developers to create an environment for meaningful transfer of information and technology, the advancement of technical vocational skill sets, and increasing capacity through training and profitable engagement. After much efforts, that proved futile. There's no time for BCAD. BCAD also tried to develop the CDQ training program in partnership with the Ministry of Education through some CDB seed funding. They were successful in their first attempt through the employment of the National Training Agency of Trinidad and Tobago. They were brought down here and they were able in the first instance to assess 200 candidates, out of which 50 plus candidates were able to be certified in Caribbean vocational qualification. 50 candidates were able to be certified in multiple modules. Now, how the modules work is that you can be certified level 1, level 2, level 3 in construction. Each level has a number of modules in it that you need to finish. That says that this needs to be a continuous system. It can't be a one-off. So that was the vision of the Builders and Contractors Association in tandem with the DCSI. And what they wanted to do was to create an educational system. A system where the contractors would pay part, the candidates, artisans who worked for the contractor would pay some, and they would use the CDB funding, Central Development Bank funding, seed funding, to create the administrative section of that learning institute. And what that would do is that it would give the contractors and the artisans a continuous learning, technical vocational learning environment, an assessment situation that will help to continuously qualify and certify our artisans. What I can say about that is that the ministry and BCAD will not be able to land at the same place that far. And that I'm not sure what is happening now. I think they have a local training institute. But I can't tell you the status of that. But BCAD also tried to promote training programs in-house that were geared towards the development and capacity building of members in the local construction industry. And we have had some successes that I would like to highlight. It's not just two, but I want to highlight two this afternoon. And that will form part of my recommendations, of our recommendations going forward. Because this is, the Builders and Contractors Association is what people can do for themselves. We can revive the organization and we can get it going again. After Hurricane Maria, because of the relationship that BCAD had formed in the region, they were able to secure $1 million from the Master Builders Association of Jamaica. It's $1 million Jamaican. But it's still a sizable amount of money. And what they did with that was to create a training program to help build capacity in the industry. We did a lot of research and a lot of gathering of information that helped us to develop a program that would serve the active needs of people currently engaged in the construction industry. I want to tell you that this is one of the biggest successes that we have that people are not shouting about. That same training program today was adopted by the University of West Indies, Dominica chapter, and is currently being run at the university every year, and it's always fully subscribed. It is called the Introduction to Construction Management, and as a matter of fact, we still have past members of the executive who lecture on an annual basis at UWE, teaching young people and senior people in the construction industry an introduction to construction management. That is something that was people-centered and developed from people that we can continually do and do for ourselves. Another success story that the Builders and Contractors Association had was, again, in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria. The World Bank decided to fund a housing project. And the initial vision from the World Bank was to get 2 or 3 large construction conglomerates, pay them, and let them carry out the works. The leadership of BICAD said, no, if we do it like that, we're going to marginalize all of the small and medium-sized contractors. Here's the suggestion. Let's create a small training program for small to medium-sized contractors. Bring them in, let them register, get them trained, and use that training as a pre-qualification to let them qualify for participating in the building program. The World Bank adopted that same system, and that is how you saw that World Bank project implemented, using small and local contractors. And it was because of the leadership and the incentive of the Builders and Contractors Association. The final thing I want to talk about before we start looking at some recommendations is the impact of the CBI on the construction industry. There's a lot of good things to say about the CBI. Plenty of good things to talk about the CBI, but this afternoon we're speaking in context of the construction industry. One of the key factors that enhances buoyancy of the local economy is your ability to export your services. And that is something that we have not seen happen through a lovely CBI. In order to participate, let's compare these two situations. In order to participate in externally funded projects, capital projects, externally funded from institutions like the European Union, Central Development Bank, the World Bank, local contractors are given an equal opportunity to tender and present either expressions of interest or proposals for the execution and completion of those works. And this might come as a surprise, because it's not talked about enough. But very often, our local contractors have competed against regional and international organizations and win. They have won, they have successfully completed the projects, and they are currently holding certificates of completion in their hands after being funded from it. You should clap for them, because that shows that we have. And it's not under easy circumstances. It's not easy circumstances, because international and external funding agencies have very strict requirements in order for you to participate. But that's not the point. The point is the contractors are given an equal opportunity on a level playing field. Very often we have to partner with each other locally, we have to partner with regional counterparts and sometimes even international counterparts to be able to successfully qualify for these projects. But we do it because the opportunity is there. The opportunity is there. We build the capacity for ourselves, whether we have to drag on our face to do it, but we do it. And we get the job done properly. In the CBI situation, that is nonsense. Because we don't get the opportunity. There's not a level playing field that exists that allows contractors to partner and come together and present a proposal in an open transparent, and equitable way for each project. What you have is each little contractor fending for himself, asking a foreigner for a job in his backyard. With money from his country, from their resources, meant for the development of their country. And local contractors become the disadvantaged ones. Simply because you're not given the opportunity to grow. The conditions are not there. The requirements are not there. And when you ask for help, I tell you, all of the contractors are my friends. The labor at one stool. They tell me when you ask for help, you're told to go up there and see if you can talk to the partner. That is part of the challenge in the construction industry, even with Dominica's resources. And we cannot benefit from it in a very holistic way. The CBI program does not have any proven training components attached to it for locally funded investments. It does not have any policy that enforces any particular type of local participation for capacity building. And what about our local enterprises that sell materials? There is no stipulation that says these enterprises, you cannot bring this in because we sell this locally, and if you want to get it from this country, go through a local to get it. There's no stipulation for that. Everybody's spending for themselves. And that creates a disadvantageous situation. But there's something I want to talk on, and there's some people here who have experience with it. With that type of situation, what do you think is happening with our social security? My time is almost up. 5 minutes? My time is almost up. Maybe in the discussion we'll get some more. But our social security is being disenfranchised as well. Our social security system is meant to take care of our seniors and those of us when we can no longer work. But it is based on your level of contribution now. If we are not able to contribute now, who is taking care of our parents? And who is going to take care of us, give us a little something when we can no longer work? Very challenging situation. One of the recommendations, the first recommendation, is that we have to relook at our policies and relook at the practices that we are accepting. We have to relook at that. We have to revisit that and ensure that we are following the ethical and accepted, universally accepted guidelines for public investment policy. And the second thing is that we have to find a way, as Dominicans, as contractors, as individuals connected to industries, to do for ourselves. We have to come together and do it for ourselves. There are things that we can do, there are things that we can start. We may need help, we may need some access, but we have to band together and move the industry for ourselves. Thank you very much.
Wow. This we are in a situation where time is such an issue. But we had to allow him to continue because what he was saying was so important. We need all the presentations. If you could forward that to us. I'd like to go further tonight so we can do some summaries, right? So send us your publications, please. Tom, so you can email everybody knows how to do that? Yeah. So Dr. Pascal, I'm going to give you a choice. You want to speak or you want to go for tomorrow or something? Because do we take 10 more minutes of presentation to Dr. Pascal? Good, that's the spirit. All right, Dr. Pascal. But we are not going to have the open session. I don't know how to fix it. All right, Dr. Pascal is going to speak from his head because he's a good doctor. But he really didn't get a chance to do some of the detailed preparation. But we know that he has a lot of insight, so he'll come out and talk. Greetings. I'd first like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to participate and contribute to the national health of Dominica. I must say I will be very short because I will hopefully not be able to meet your expectations with my very usual presentations. Because of circumstances beyond my control, I'll leave it at that. This topic, the importance of the health sector in our future development, I'm sure is apparent to everyone in here. But I would just like to start by reminding us that health is not only being sick, health is our mental and social well-being, and not just being sick. So we have to remember that when we're talking about health, because we're not talking about just sick kid. And the other thing I'd like to underline is that for the future economic growth of the country, what pertains to the individuals in the country also pertains to the country as a whole, because the country is the collection of the individuals. So your health is your wealth. And if you don't have any health, you have no wealth. And if you don't have wealth, Dominica has no wealth, nor in the future. So ensure, and we all know in general policy and administrative terms that any administration that cannot guarantee the education and the educational well-being and the health well-being of the citizens that are living currently is ensuring poverty for its future citizens. And we need to remind ourselves of that all the time. Because if you can't guarantee the health of the people, you're ensuring their poverty because their health is their wealth. So from that point of view, we know as well that the better the economy, the better the health of the individuals. But the opposite is also true. If the individuals have no health, then the economy has no health. And I'm not an economist, so I'm not going to go there. Effective health systems are for providing care to the sick, producing measures that, or having measures that produce wellness and prevent disease. Unfortunately, again, because of circumstances beyond my control, I couldn't get the required statistics to sort of help to clarify that. But as far as I am aware, the percentage of our national budget that is attributed to the health system or the health service or the health ministry is somewhere between 10 to 13%. In terms of the recommendations, GDP, 5 to 6% of your GDP supposed to be allocated towards health. And I think currently in Dominica, that isn't where we are. So that speaks to the point that if in Dominica we have, in 2021, it seems 11% of the GDP was allocated to health. In 21-22, it was 7%. In 2023, it's 4%.
And so far in 24, according to these figures, and I'm not the authority on this, it's 5%. So that doesn't bode well for you guys' wealth or the wealth of the future wealth of the country. And the expectation is that more and more of the overall sum that is spent towards providing quality health care will increase as the years go by. And we have to keep that in mind. So whatever we're spending now that we think is so much, there's no way it's going to decrease. It will increase, and it will increase simply because of the role of technology in the provision of quality healthcare services. We like to talk about China, and we like to use China. But what I found out in the 2 minutes I had to Google a couple things is that China is increasing its spending on healthcare by 20 to 30% a year. I repeat that. China is increasing its spending on healthcare by 20 to 30% a year. So you know what China is doing is ensuring the future wealth of its citizens and of the country. So when we see China doing what they're doing, there's a reason for it. And I will add to that the majority of those resources are supposed to be spent in biomedical research. And biomedical research is about prevention, knowing what's coming, using technology. So I overall will just present that as the introduction and the picture that you have to deal with for the future development of healthcare and health economics in this country. The vein of providing, well, I like to call it healthcare, but maybe I should. But the vein of providing sick care, or most of the money we spend now is providing care for the sick. And care for the sick for what we call chronic non-communicable diseases that everybody has an idea what that is. Hypertension, diabetes, cancer, mental health. And as we say mental health, I just want to maybe refer to something that Dr. Fontaine said in his introductory address about our identity as Dominicans. It's a reflection of our mental health. If we see our identity based on party political colors. Because those who understand how the human consciousness, the human mind works, know that your freedom comes from your shackle. The more you shackle to your identity, the freer you are. Can I say that again? If your identity is a Dominican, the more you shackle to that, the freer you are. That's the point he was making. If your identity is a Labourite or UWP, I think freedom. That's the amount of freedom you have because you'll be shackled to that identity. So that's part of your mental health. Okay, because health is not only your physical health, and that identity determines your social health because that also determines how you interact with fellow Dominicans. You don't fight with fellow Dominicans. But if your identity is a worker or Labourite, yeah, you fight with them. So I just wanted to put that on the table and thank Dr. Fontaine for trying his best to help us to see how important it is for our health, which is our wealth, to be shackled to our identities. So, given that chronic non-communicable diseases It's where we spend most of the funds these days, or where all of the money goes to provide care to those who have those, not so much care to prevent, which that should happen anyway. What's been highlighted is that it's easier to prevent, to detect, and treat these conditions because of technology. It's the technology that's driving the quality of care. So if we look at what's happening in Dominica now, or the sort of, I don't even know what to call it, bouillon, quagmire, whatever you want to call it, when it comes to quality health care, which everybody in this room and every Dominican is entitled to. There should be no discrimination. Some people should have a certain quality of health care and others don't. I think I would like to point out that it's mainly because the present administration, health administrators, maybe even we ourselves, continue to use old models to look at quality health care. And that old model I'd like to just share is that there's a trinity. We like to talk about trinities. We're a Christian community. There's a trinity of things, three things that are important in quality health care. The health professional, the nature of the patient, and finances. The thing is that those things have always been there from time immemorial. But their contribution to quality health care has changed over the years, especially with the rise in technology. So maybe in the 60s and 70s, out of the three, the main contributor to your quality of health care was the quality of the health professional. The patient, well, patients in those days just accepted whatever we told them. They didn't fight, they didn't know better, they didn't have access to knowing, well, their cousin in England is getting a CT scan, so why they can't get a CT scan? So it was the knowledge and the experience of the health professionals, not just doctors, nurses, everybody, that determined your quality of care more than anything else. Finance wasn't as significant, it was significant. So if we would say, well, there was 100%, I would say 60% in 1970 was contributed from the health professional, 30% finance and 10% from the patient. That determined your quality of care. The thing is that is no longer so, because things have changed, and things have changed primarily because of technology. So the patient is much more informed because of technology. The patient has a higher expectation again because of technology. The doctor who used to be maybe the main, or the health professional who used to be the main contributor, depends extensively on technology. So, and technology means money and finance. There's no technology that is free. And the newer the technology, more expensive it is. It's as simple as that. So whereas a health professional like a doctor, you go to see him, only thing he had was a stethoscope. And whatever little knowledge he had in his head, and he'd do his best, and yeah, most times, it would work out. You wouldn't get worse, you'd be satisfied with your care, and that'd be okay. You went home, you got better, maybe because of him, maybe not because of him. The thing is that if you come to see me today, and I just use my stethoscope, what kind of doctor is that? You want a CT scan. You want to know when you're going to see the specialist. So you want all these tests that you're aware of as a patient. So the cost changes immediately. because you're talking about technology. So finance really has become the most influential factor in quality of healthcare. And if you're talking about the economy and the future, I think this is what we have to grapple with, because this is what I don't think is understood by the present administrators of healthcare in this country. Because if that was so, the percentage of GDP that's been attributed to health wouldn't be decreasing. If that was so, you wouldn't have these issues of no this and no that. And the people who run the hospital would have a credit card with a $1 million limit on it. So, in this consideration of what we're going to do and the relationship between what's going to happen in healthcare and the future economy, recognize in my view that the reason we have so many problems right now is because we are patterning our actions on old models that are no longer relevant to the current times. And patients must understand that, administrators must understand that, but especially policies to come to you should. Because that's all what's happening now. So you cannot tell me that I pay my insurance all year, or for 50 years, and then I get to 60 and I end up in the hospital and my insurance doesn't pay a cent. Because there is a vote-catching policy that says if you're above 60, don't care where you lived in Dominica all your life, don't care how much money you have, you get that for free. So, I don't have much time. I have less than 5 minutes, that's what I was told. So, I just wanted to put that out. I wish I had a little more time to prepare and expand on that. But what I think we should be looking at in talking about the future of healthcare as it relates to the economy is how we fund healthcare. And not just how we fund healthcare, how we use those resources efficiently and effectively. So for example, we should be talking about, without any shadow of a doubt, the Labour Party spoke about this in, when did they come into power? 2000? And we should have, by now, Dominica must be the only island that doesn't have a national health insurance. So as a fundamental, that should be part of any futuristic hope for quality health care and the wealth of the people. We should also encourage people to take more responsibility for their health, because the diseases that are being treated, it's not like in the old days where it's because you get bit by a mosquito and they didn't clean the drain. The diseases that we have to deal with are self-imposed most of the time. So this luxury about where you're entitled to health care as if you don't have any corroded is outdated. Because most of the diseases are related to our lifestyles. Whether we drive fast and get in accidents, whether we drive drunk and get in accidents, whether we eat junk and get hypertension and diabetes, etc., whether we don't exercise, or whether we don't even use the same internet that we use to come and tell me, Doc, this is what I have. And not use it to say, well, how can I get some more information about my condition? So I'm saying the responsibilities as well need to be understood, that your quality of healthcare depends a lot more on you now than it would have depended on you in the 60s and 70s. So I think we should encourage that, especially by private insurances or even things like making sure you put, there's something, maybe I should say, there is something that, even the education on how you take health insurance, all these things, how you tell me that somebody who is 18 years is paying insurance premiums and they have a full-time job, and they maybe won't have a major medical problem, but they're paying insurance to go and see the doctor. It makes no sense. You should be paying insurance to finance a catastrophic event that might make you poor because you off work for 3 or 4 months. So all of these things, I think these are things that need to be addressed when we're talking about financing healthcare and empowering citizens and patients to do some of the things they can to help themselves. And I must say one of the things that need to change, or will change, whether we like it or not, is this political imperative to gain votes using healthcare, because that's a recipe for poverty. Thank you very much.
I'm not taking any questions.
Sorry? Somebody wants to ask a comment? One comment? Go ahead.
Dr. Pascal struck a note there where he said the importance of a national health scheme for Dominicans. And when he said that, I went back memory lane. 31 years ago, Dominica Grammar School I was. The Dominica Social Security then had a competition among secondary schools. And the scenario was that how will a health insurance scheme help Dominicans? That was an essay competition that the DSS put on among secondary schools. And you remember that?
Yes.
Very well. So witnesses there. And I, among other secondary schools, copped the prize. The trophy went to grammar school through my efforts, and also $500 went in my pocket as a result. So just to reiterate the point, we have been talking about things like what Dr. Pascal spoke about many years ago. And I guess it is just the lack of the political will to get these things kicking in the interest of Dominicans. So, Doc, thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Your health is your wealth. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, to add to what Mr. Tirando said, I remember sometime between 1995, I don't remember the exact year, but sometime between 1995 and 1999, a move was in a motion to start or to begin a national health insurance scheme for Dominica. As a matter of fact, at the Social Security where I once worked for most of my life, the movement had already begun. The talks, the conversation was already in action to begin that such an important scheme. Somewhere along the line, after the year 2000, fell apart, and hence the consequences we face today. But we should really have a health insurance scheme. In the year 1993-94, I went to Martinique for an operation on my knee. And the people in Martinique were bewildered that they didn't have to pay anything for their health services, whereas I had to pay some $4,000 just for short incision. They could not believe why I did not have national health insurance. So it's important that we start thinking. It's maybe almost too late for my generation, but we need to start being very proactive in thinking national health insurance, which will benefit every single Dominican. That's the way to go.
Thank you. Yes. Okay, there is so much we need to continue to say. We could possibly do justice to everything in just And as you could have seen, in just one day. But we have a very interesting day coming up tomorrow. So we want you to come. One of the challenges we had today was we started 1 hour late because we were waiting for you to come. But we want everyone to make a special effort to be there on time. You want to encourage others. Come on out, let's have that conversation. And like brother from Mount Prosper, as they said, this must not just be talk. That goes for the UWP, that goes for NJAM, that goes for all of us who is in part of this new thing, where, as Delbert said, even if, until such time, I didn't say that, but until such time as we can fix our governance, there are things we've got to do to help ourselves.
Change.
Right? So, but we are in dire straits, but we've got to get out of it. God is good. We will get out of it. We will change our governance. We will fix our governance, but we will also fix our country one way or the other. Yeah? But I see you don't want to go, so that's good. I mean, I am really encouraged that you have stayed till this point, but it's 5 o'clock. It's past 5 now. It's 5:19. We will not do the breakout session. Sorry. Good thing we got a few questions in. The whole session is recorded, I believe. We got a few questions in. So tomorrow we will see what we can do in terms of having the breakout sessions. But if we come on time, we start on time, and we'll be stricter on the time limits, and hopefully we will get to the breakout sessions, because people do have a lot to contribute, as we could have seen here today. So everyone, thank you very much. Let's give all ourselves a very good hand. Safe journey back. God bless. Thank God. I didn't even get to it.
So there you have it, folks, the end of day 1 of the Economic Revival Summit. You heard presentations from persons in the construction industry as well as agriculture and tourism. We will be back tomorrow, same time, 9 o'clock, right here, and do join us then. So from all of us at MO News, we are saying thank you for joining. We do hope that you gain some valuable information and that you do not keep the information to yourself, that you share the live, you share